Hi everyone, Simon from Horoma Studio. So today we're going to have a look at this really interesting rendering that was done for the One Rendering Challenge organized by Arctizer. I'm doing this live, so hopefully I won't forget too many topics. So if we have a first look at the overall composition, if I may say. So just to give a little bit of background, the idea is that we have this building here that is getting a new addition that is in sort of like cortain metal perforated panels, and that is supposed to act as a sort of beacon. So there's like this whole thing regarding basically this space acting as a sort of a lighthouse or whatever. So in terms of composition, everything is supposed to be centered around this, or at least that's what I understood, and sort of like the complementary like play or whatever between the two, the existing and the new. So when it comes to composition, I think the overall point of view is interesting. It is interesting to have like this sort of division where you have like basically a third with the old, new, and sort of context. So with this, I think it's fine. Whoops. Having the overall vertical, what am I doing? Having the vertical framing, I think, is fine as well, because there's this sort of idea of having something quite light, I'd say. So I think it's nice, because like I think one of the more basic way we could have gone is like maybe with a more frontal view that would maybe have a little bit more of this part, but it would be less dynamic, I think. So I think this is nice. When it comes to values, I think it's also good to see that this is the brightest area, which is basically what you would want if you want your viewer to focus on this part. So I think there are many ways to make this more, well, it's not more interesting because it already is nice, but to make it work a little bit better. I'd say the first thing I'm wondering is regarding the sky or the overall atmosphere. I think it is nice. Two things I'm going to say. I think the atmosphere works well. I think it should be taken a little bit further and play on like, if you want to keep it overcast like that, I think it could be interesting still to have maybe this idea that it's been raining just before, so that you would have like stronger reflection on the floor, which would give like more importance to this area because it would be reflected here. This could be an interesting way to maybe do it, because here it is not like actually overcast, it's more like actually dark clouds of like rain clouds. So this could make sense. One thing that you could actually also potentially think of, every time personally when I have bricks, I tend to try to get actual sunlight touching them, because unlike like concrete, which is kind of a slightly boring material, even though like I love it, but in terms of texture it's not the most dynamic. Whereas if it comes to it can be wood, but bricks is especially like, considering you have always this sort of pattern of slightly different shades, etc. When you have the light hitting the bricks, you're going to have slight difference of glossiness and reflection, which is going to make the facade extremely interesting. So maybe what you have is actually like right after the rain, it's like you still have some clouds, but you have like a little bit of blue or sky, or maybe you don't see it in the frame and it's coming from behind you. But basically what I want to say is that you could have like direct sunlight hitting the facade, so that you have something slightly more actually dramatic, with like maybe some cast shadows that are super long and blah blah blah. It could be whoops could be potentially interesting. But even like with this sort of like hierarchy, it is working sort of okay. So that is nice. One thing that is a bit weird, I think, is the absence of lighting here. So it is a bit whoops, sorry. It is a bit, you would want this to be connected to the floor basically. Maybe architecturally it isn't, but maybe you could have like artificial lighting that makes it more like feeling that it comes from the ground. And also I think that's really the main thing, is that this overall artificial lighting doesn't feel like actually vibrant, because it is not reflected on the floor and it is not actually lighting the floor. What you would sort of expect, I think, if you want to make this really strong, is that it actually creates a little bit of like cast shadows from people that are really close, a little bit of like hue changes nearby, and maybe, as I said, like some stronger reflection in the floor. So this could be completely done like in post-production. If you get like a decent reflection pass here, you can sort of rework it to get like more visible reflection. When it comes to entourage, I really like the way they are integrated. I think it's a really good work because they all have like, they're all properly desaturated and they're all like properly placed, I think. I think it could be interesting though to have like a couple of people inside the building, maybe even be behind here, so that you can read like maybe shadows of people. That could be potentially interesting. I think there's a, oops, there's a, the Cortine metal sheet texture is not really good. Something weird is happening here actually. I think it needs a little bit of refining. Like you can see it's pretty low texture, or it's burnt everywhere, so I would rework it. And also maybe like in the same way that this light is not doing anything here, it doesn't seem to be lighting the underside of our roof here, which is something you would sort of expect. I'm not against the sort of like light effect here. It is quite interesting. I think also one thing that could be interesting is that either have stronger reflection on the glass here, because it looks a little bit dead, or have more variation in the light. Maybe it would be interesting to actually have stronger lighting in the background, in the ground floor, sorry, a little bit of lighting here, so that you have this sort of highlighted part that sort of leads your eyes to this part here, which could be interesting. I think completely unrelated, but the context is really nice, and there's like an interesting aerial perspective or like depth effect. Although depending on which what's the word? Depending on which scenario you go with, you could actually get maybe slightly more fog behind, but this is really, I think it's fine. This tree here looks super small, which is a bit weird. Just like, that's one of the topic I was talking with the first digital video, is that when you insert cutout, just make sure they are at the right scale. And when I look at this one, I feel like he should be bigger. Whereas, I mean, in terms of like the actual proportion in the image, it's fine, although it could be slightly higher. But I'm really talking about just the cutout, because this is like 180, 360. It's like a 5 meter tree, but it doesn't look like a 5 meter tree when you look at the actual way it looks like. I would definitely try to add, if you can, details inside, because it does look a bit lifeless, but I'm not meaning like that you need to add people everywhere, but it's nice to have like, maybe you have like pipes and ducts and insulation that can be seen from here, or maybe you can add like a little bit of details of what's happening here, if it's like a cafeteria or whatever. Maybe this, even though like this is like a sitting area, but the weather is bad, so there's no reason for people to be here, it could potentially be interesting to find something to do though. I don't know. I think this guy is okay. I've never been a huge fan of blurred people in the foreground, but maybe one last topic. In terms of color palette, I really like the colors, so it's nice. I think it's properly done. I like the way it is sort of like the sky sort of leads toward this area, so it's working nicely. One last thing I was about to say is that it could potentially, I really like, that's the thing, I think I like this guy also, so I think I like this guy because I know that without it this would be extremely empty, but maybe it could be interesting to get rid of this guy and start playing with like the idea that since it's been raining, maybe you have like, oh, I'm gonna draw that properly, or like maybe you have like puddle of water and blah blah blah, and maybe you could actually start having like dead leaves that have been like carried away by the wind during the like small storm or whatever that happened right before. And that way you could potentially have, I mean, like this, all the what's the word, the limits are super clean, which is like the only thing I think could be more like dirty or whatever. And in that way, with this plus the reflection of the extension and all that kind of small details, you could actually maybe get rid of this guy, or maybe do it in a slightly different way. You could still keep it, I mean, if you like it, although I think it should be slightly bigger. It depends on, feels slightly a bit weird. But I mean, having like a more interesting foreground with like more density could be interesting. And yeah, coming back to this, since this is the overall base for the overall image, I would try to add also like at least be able to read the what could potentially happen behind the sort of curtain here, because now we don't see any type of furniture or whatever. So I think there's something to be refined here, but the overall atmosphere is really nice. It's just, yeah, small details like that that could really take it to the next level. This is it really competing or not? I'm just gonna check that quickly. Threshold, boom. Duk. Yeah, this might be slightly too intense, maybe. And I wouldn't, like, you can see that it's sort of just the, what's the word? The windows that have been sort of burned. If you can, try always to find like whatever photo you have that sort of fits the perspective, because it's gonna look like more realistic, because here it's a bit too flat. Here it doesn't matter because of course it's like way too far, same here. But here I think you need to have that extra level of detail, or just like turn it off. I mean, it's fine. Or you could have maybe your trees actually going on top of it and you can only see through, so it doesn't matter anymore. I don't know, something like that. Just checking that. On just the overall thing, there's a slightly bit too much noise on the overall image, I think. One good thing is that everything is sort of homogenized, which is the most important thing, so there's noise everywhere. But I think there's a little bit too much noise. But beside that, I really like the atmosphere, so it's really good job. I'll stop here. Hopefully you have some interesting tips from there, and I'll see you in the next Teardown. Thank you guys. Cheers.